How I learned English in 3 months. I didn't plan to change my life in 3 months. I didn't wake up with a master plan. I didn't have money for coaching. I didn't have a perfect environment. I didn't even have confidence. All I had was pain. And sometimes pain is the strongest teacher you will ever meet because pain removes your excuses. Pain forces you to face the truth. Pain shows you the mirror you've been avoiding, and that mirror changed everything for me. I still remember the exact moment my life broke open. I still remember the room, the chair, the smell of cold air, the email notification flashing on my phone, the words that stabbed me harder than any insult. We appreciate your interest, but your English communication is not strong enough for this position. Just one line, one short line, and it destroyed everything I had been working for. That was the third rejection in a row. 3 interviews, 3 failures. Not because I wasn't smart, not because I wasn't skilled, not because I wasn't qualified, just because I couldn't speak English confidently. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like my future had been taken away from me. My hands went numb, my heart sank into a dark hole. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I never wanted to ask. Is English going to control the rest of my life? That question hurt. It hurt more than rejection. It hurt more than any failure I had faced. But that pain became the fuel for my transformation. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was sad, but because something awakened inside me. A fire, a decision, a moment of clarity. I told myself, give me 3 months, just 3 months. I will rebuild myself. And that was the beginning of my journey. The breaking point that became my starting point, and most people think change starts with motivation. No, it starts with truth. And the truth was simple. I wasn't bad at English. I was bad at practicing it. I wasn't lacking intelligence. I was lacking consistency. I wasn't weak. I was silent. I was like millions of English learners. I understood everything, but I couldn't speak. I froze when someone talked to me. My tongue locked, my throat tightened, my mind blanked. I avoided English, and English avoided me. But in that moment of pain, I realized something shocking. English is not a language problem. English is a daily habit problem. This one realization changed my entire journey. I didn't need a foreign country, leadhees, a native speaker, expensive tutors, perfect grammar. I needed one thing, a daily system, a simple, honest, realistic system that I could follow even on my worst days. The 3-month rule that saved my life. I created a rule for myself. Every day for 3 months, I will speak English out loud, no matter what. Not think, not translate, not feel shy, not wait for someone. Just speak. Even if it sounded broken, even if it was slow, even if it made no sense, because speaking is a muscle and mine was asleep. So I woke it up. I chose a simple routine that even the laziest version of me could follow. 10 minutes of shadowing, 10 minutes of self-talk, 10 minutes of voice recording, 30 minutes a day. Every day. No excuses. This routine didn't feel big, it didn't feel magical, it didn't feel special, but it was powerful, it was consistent, it was transformational, because small daily actions create big monthly changes. The fear I finally defeated. The hardest part wasn't learning English. The hardest part was fighting with the voice inside my head that kept saying, "You sound stupid. You will make mistakes. People will laugh. You'll never be fluent." But the truth is, no one was laughing, no one was judging, no one was watching. The only enemy was my own fear. So I made a promise to myself: in these 3 months, I will not protect my fear, I will protect my future. The moment my voice started changing, something strange happened after 2 weeks. I didn't even realize it at first. But one morning, while speaking to myself in English, my words flowed without stopping. My voice felt freer. My tongue moved faster. My brain didn't translate anymore. It was the first time in my life I felt the beginning of fluency. And that moment, that first breakthrough, felt better than any success I had known. I realized English begins working for you the moment you stop fearing it. This is your invitation. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you've lost opportunities because of English. Maybe you feel embarrassed, stuck, afraid, or behind. Maybe people underestimate you because you can't express yourself. Maybe your dreams feel far away just because of one language. But remember this: you can change more in 3 months than most people change in 3 years. Not because 3 months is enough, but because 3 months of consistency can break a lifetime of fear. If you're ready, if you're tired of being silent, if you're tired of losing chances, then this journey is for you. Because if I can rebuild my future in 3 months, so can you. This is your beginning. This is your turning point. This is your moment. Welcome to the journey of how I learned English in 3 months. Segment 2. The system that changed everything. When I started this journey, I didn't know what fluency looked like. I didn't know how my voice should sound, how my confidence should feel, or how fast my progress should be. All I knew was this: I couldn't live another year trapped inside the same silence. I couldn't keep watching opportunities walk past me because I didn't dare to speak. I couldn't keep pretending that one day would magically fix everything. I needed a system, a real system, a simple system, a system so easy that even on days when I felt tired, lazy, unmotivated, or sad, I could still follow it. Because English does not grow through inspiration. English grows through repetition. And that's how the 3-month system was born. Not from genius, but from desperation. I wanted fluency. I wanted confidence. I wanted freedom. And the only way to get there was to build a routine strong enough to carry me through my weakest days. So let me take you inside that system. The same one that took me from fear to fluency. The same one that can take you there too. The first rule: English must become a daily voice, not a subject, not a textbook chapter, not a weekend activity, but a voice, a presence, a part of your day, like brushing your teeth or checking your phone. Most learners fail because they treat English like homework. Homework can be delayed. Homework can be skipped. Homework can be avoided. But your voice? You use it every day. So English must become something your voice touches daily. This was the core of the system. I will use my voice in English every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. And believe me, this one decision changed everything. The second rule: small effort, big consistency. People imagine fluency requires huge effort, hours of study, long grammar sessions, complicated vocabulary lists. But I learned something life changing. You don't need intensity, you need consistency. Let me explain. If you speak English for 3 hours one day, 0 hours the next 4 days, you're not growing. But if you speak for 10 minutes every day for 30 days, you transform your brain. The brain doesn't learn from pressure, it learns from patterns. Every day you repeat something, your brain says, "This is important. Let me strengthen this." So I made my practice so small that failure was impossible. 10 minutes shadowing, 10 minutes self-talk, 10 minutes voice recording, 30 minutes, that's it. And that became the strongest habit I've ever built. The third rule: speak before you think. This one changed everything. You see, most learners fail because they think too much. They think about grammar, they think about mistakes, they think about sentence structure, they think about what others will think. But speaking is not thinking. Speaking is flow. Speaking is rhythm. Speaking is connection. So I trained myself to speak before my brain could stop me. I told myself, don't think, speak. Don't translate, express. The moment a thought came, I spoke it, even if it sounded broken, even if it was simple, even if it was messy, because messy speaking creates fluency, perfect speaking creates fear, and fear was the enemy, the shadowing habit that reshaped my speaking. If I had to choose one habit that gave me 80% of my progress, it would be shadowing. Shadowing is simple. Listen to a native speaker repeat their words exactly at the same time. Not later, not after pausing, not slowly, exactly, immediately, emotionally. In the beginning, it was hard. My tongue felt heavy, my speed was slow, my rhythm didn't match, but I kept going. My mouth began learning how English really sounds, my voice became more natural, my speech became smoother. Shadowing turned my thinking brain off and turned my speaking brain on. It was like learning a song. The more I repeated, the more automatic it became. The self-talk habit that made me fearless. I still remember the first time I talked to myself in English. It felt weird, it felt awkward, it felt silly. But after 3 days, something changed. I started enjoying it. It became fun. It became my space to practice without fear. I talked about what I was doing, what I was feeling, what I planned for the day, but what happened yesterday. Random thoughts, I realized something deep. Talking to yourself is not crazy. Ignoring your growth is. Self-talk made me comfortable hearing my own voice in English. It removed the fear of sounding strange. It made speaking natural, and that natural feeling is the foundation of fluency. The voice recording habit that showed me the truth. Most learners hate hearing their own voice. I did too. But recording my voice was the most honest teacher I ever had. When I listened to myself, I heard my pauses, I heard my confidence, I heard my mistakes, I heard my improvements every day. I compared today's voice with yesterday's voice, Every week I compared this week to the last, and slowly I heard a miracle happening. My voice was changing, my sentences were smoother, my tone was clearer, my fear was disappearing. Recording didn't just show me my mistakes, it showed me my transformation, the breakthrough after 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That's how long it took. 3 weeks of showing up, 3 weeks of pushing myself, 3 weeks of whispering, talking, shadowing, recording, 3 weeks of small daily victories, and suddenly I sounded different. I didn't freeze while speaking. I didn't translate. I didn't panic. Words came naturally. Sentences formed faster. I wasn't fluent yet, but I was free. For the first time in my life, I felt like English belonged to me, like I could shape it, control it, use it. The fear that lived in my chest for years started to melt. And that's when I realized fluency isn't a language skill, Fry. Fluency is a confidence skill. The system became my identity. I no longer practiced English. I lived English. When I woke up, I spoke. While cooking, I shadowed. While walking, I self talked. Before sleeping, I recorded. This wasn't homework, it was who I was becoming. And that's when the true magic of the 3 month challenge began. Because once a habit becomes part of your identity, growth becomes automatic. And now it's your turn. You don't need talent. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need a native speaker. You don't need to move abroad. You need a simple system, small daily habits, a fearless mindset, the courage to face your voice. The belief that you can transform. 3 months can change everything, but only if you decide to start. And if you're ready to take that step, then trust me, your future self is already celebrating. This journey is real, this system works, and this story is for you. Because if I can do it in 3 months, you can too. Segment 3. The fear that tried to stop me. I used to think the biggest enemy in my English journey was grammar. I used to think it was vocabulary. I used to think it was not having a partner, not living abroad, not having the environment. But I was wrong, completely wrong. The real enemy was something far more powerful. Something that lived inside me, not outside. Fear. Fear was the thing that kept my mouth closed when my mind knew the right words. Fear was the thing that made me stay silent in conversations. Fear was the voice that whispered, "You will embarrass yourself." Fear was the wall that stood between me and every opportunity I lost. And before I could become fluent in English, I had to become fluent in courage. This is the part most learners never talk about. Everyone wants tips, methods, routines, but nobody wants to confront the one thing that destroys more dreams than failure ever could. Fear is the invisible barrier between who you are and who you could be. Every time I opened my mouth to speak English, fear appeared like a shadow. It tightened my throat. It made my heart beat louder than my thoughts. It made every sentence feel like a risk. It convinced me that everyone was judging my accent. It convinced me that people were laughing behind my back. It convinced me that I would fail before I even tried. And here is a truth I finally understood. English is not difficult. Fear makes it difficult. Fear makes simple words feel impossible. Fear makes your tongue heavy. Fear makes you forget basic sentences. Fear makes you speak slower than your thoughts. Fear makes you doubt everything you say. Fear is the real language barrier. So before I learned English in 3 months, I learned how to fight fear. And that battle began with honesty. I admitted something I never wanted to admit. I was afraid of my own voice, afraid of how I sounded, afraid of being judged, afraid of being wrong, afraid of looking stupid, afraid of not being enough. But fear loses power when you speak its name. The moment you admit you are afraid, the fear becomes smaller. And once it becomes smaller, you can finally fight it. The way I fought fear was simple. I practiced being uncomfortable. Every single day I did something that made me feel nervous. Not big things, not dramatic things, just small, controlled discomfort, a few seconds of courage, 10 seconds of bravery, enough to teach my body that fear cannot stop me. When I shadowed English speakers, I did it even when my pronunciation sounded embarrassing. When I practiced self-talk, I spoke louder than before, even if I felt awkward. When I recorded my voice, I listened to it even when it made me cringe. Every one of these moments was a battle with fear, and every battle made me stronger. The strangest thing happened during this process. One day, while shadowing a podcast, I noticed something different. For the first time, I was not thinking about how I sounded. I was thinking about what I was saying. Fear was still there, but it was quieter. It didn't stop me. It didn't freeze me. It didn't control me. The first time you speak without fear gripping your throat, something inside you wakes up. A new kind of confidence, a new kind of freedom, a new version of yourself you didn't know existed. That day was not the end of fear, but it was the beginning of courage. Let me tell you something I wish someone told me earlier. Courage does not mean you stop being afraid. Courage means you act even while afraid. Courage means you open your mouth even when your voice shakes. Courage means you practice even when your accent feels strange. Courage means you continue even when your mistakes feel heavy. Fear was still with me in those 3 months. But instead of standing in front of me, blocking my way, fear began standing behind me, watching me grow stronger. There was one moment that changed everything. I tried speaking English with a stranger online. I was terrified. My hands were sweating. My heart was racing. My voice cracked when I said the first sentence. But the stranger didn't laugh. He didn't judge. He didn't criticize. He simply spoke back, normally, naturally, kindly. In that one small moment, I realized something powerful. Nobody is judging you as harshly as you judge yourself. People are too busy with their own lives to analyze your English. The world is not waiting to laugh at you. The world is waiting to communicate with you, and that realization freed me. Once fear lost control of my tongue, English began to flow. Words came faster, sentences formed naturally, confidence built itself quietly inside me. Not because my English was perfect, but because my courage was growing. If you want to learn English in 3 months, you need a system, yes. You need consistency, yes. But without courage, the system dies. Without courage, consistency breaks. Without courage, your voice never grows. Fear is still there, even today, but now it walks behind me. Now it whispers softly instead of screaming loudly. Now it reminds me that I am human, not helpless. And the truth is simple. Fear is not your enemy unless you obey it. If you walk anyway, speak anyway, practice anyway, fear becomes your teacher. It becomes the pressure that shapes you, not the weight that breaks you. This journey is not just about English. It is about courage. It is about becoming the version of yourself that fear once said you could never be. It is about proving fear wrong with every word you speak. You do not have to eliminate fear. You only have to stop letting it decide your future. And when you do that, your voice will rise. Your confidence will rise. Your life will rise. Because fear may be powerful, but it is not stronger than a human being who has decided to grow. And now that you know the truth, your rise begins here. Segment 4. The turning point, when English became my second voice. There comes a moment in every transformation when you suddenly realize that you're no longer the same person who started the journey. You don't notice the change happening day by day, but one morning you wake up and feel it. A shift, a lightness, a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. That happened to me halfway through the 3-month challenge. One simple morning, without anything dramatic happening, I realized something shocking. English had become a part of me. Not something I was learning, something I was living. Until then, English felt like a foreign guest in my mind. I had to invite it. I had to prepare for it. I had to force myself to use it. But suddenly, English started entering my thoughts without knocking. It flowed into my morning routines, my daily emotions, my inner monologue. It stopped feeling like a subject and it started feeling like a voice. This was not magic. It was months of persistence. This was not talent. It was daily repetition. This was not luck. It was alignment. The first time I realized this was when I caught myself thinking in English without trying. I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my teeth, and reflexively said out loud, "I didn't sleep well last night." I hadn't planned to practice. I wasn't doing self-talk. It happened naturally, instinctively, without fear. That is when I understood something enormous. Fluency doesn't start in your mouth. Fluency starts in your mind. When your thoughts begin switching languages on their own, that is the moment you step into a new level of mastery. It wasn't just thinking, though. New things began happening in my voice, too. My sentences became smoother, my pauses grew shorter, my breathing settled into a natural rhythm when speaking. The tension that once lived in my shoulders whenever I tried to talk in English slowly dissolved. I spoke with less effort, I spoke with less fear, I spoke with less hesitation. English was no longer a performance. It was no longer something I had to prepare for. It was simply something I could do. People think fluency is about perfect grammar or perfect vocabulary, but my turning point had nothing to do with perfection. It had everything to do with ease. Ease is the milestone that tells you your brain has finally accepted English as a usable tool, not an impossible mountain. I noticed the change most clearly in conversations. When someone spoke English, I didn't panic, I didn't freeze. My heart didn't explode with fear. Instead, I responded like a person having a normal conversation. I didn't overthink, I didn't worry about mistakes, I didn't try to construct the perfect sentence. I simply replied, "This was new, beautifully, powerfully new." And with this shift came an even deeper realization. English isn't about speaking correctly. It's about speaking courageously. When this clicked, everything started changing faster. My confidence grew. My voice grew. My presence grew. I wasn't the scared version of myself anymore. I wasn't the silent version anymore. I wasn't the limited version anymore. The older version of me, the one who feared speaking, the one who avoided English, the one who always doubted himself, began fading into the background. A new version of me emerged, one who believed in the possibility of transformation. Every day I practiced, the progress became more noticeable. Shadowing felt smoother. Self-talk felt natural. Recording my voice felt empowering instead of embarrassing. I began enjoying the process instead of surviving it. This was unexpected. I didn't start this journey to enjoy English. I started it because I was tired of losing opportunities. But somewhere along the way, English stopped being a weapon against me and became a companion. There was one moment I will never forget. I sat in a coffee shop sipping my drink, listening to a podcast in English. Not studying, not forcing myself, just listening casually. And for the first time in my life, I understood everything without translating, no confusion, no delay, no stress, just pure understanding. In that moment, I felt tears in my eyes, not because of difficulty, but because of pride. I had become someone I never believed I could be. This is the part learners never expect. When you push long enough, something breaks open inside you. A new identity forms. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is learning English. Instead, you see yourself as someone who can communicate, express, connect, and understand in English. And that shift is bigger than grammar, bigger than vocabulary, bigger than rules. It is identity, it is belief, it is power. Your identity changes before your fluency does. And when your identity changes, fluency follows naturally. Because once you believe you can speak English, your brain begins proving it to you. Halfway through my journey, I realized that English wasn't the challenge anymore. I was the challenge. My old beliefs, my old fears, my old habits. Once those began fading, the new voice inside me grew louder. That voice spoke with strength. That voice spoke with clarity. That voice spoke with future. And that is the moment I understood the truth. Learning English in 3 months isn't a miracle. Learning English in 3 months is a mindset. Anyone can do what I did. Anyone can rise the way I rose. Anyone can transform their voice, their confidence, their opportunities. But you must reach this turning point, the point where English becomes your second voice, the point where consistency becomes identity, the point where fear becomes smaller than possibility. When you reach that point, you don't just learn English, you become unstoppable. And the next chapter of my 3-month journey proved exactly that. Segment 5: The Breakthrough. When everything starts working together. There is a moment in every long journey when all the small pieces you've been practicing suddenly connect. Not because you planned it, not because you forced it, but because your mind has finally had enough time to adapt, reorganize, and build a new system inside you. This moment is what I call the breakthrough. And for me, that breakthrough came around the middle of the second month. The strange part about breakthroughs is that they don't feel dramatic. They don't arrive with fireworks. They don't shout, "Your life is changing." They come quietly, almost silently, like light slipping through a half-open window. You only notice them when you look back and realize, wait, I couldn't do this before. My breakthrough started during a simple self-talk session. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't pushing myself. I was just speaking out loud, describing my day, the weather, my plans. Then suddenly I noticed something that made my heart stop for a moment. I hadn't paused, not once, not for a word, not for translation, not for fear. I had spoken for 2 entire minutes without breaking the flow. 2 minutes. It may not sound like much, but for someone who once froze at the first sentence, it was everything. I realized that my brain was no longer translating. It was reacting, responding, thinking directly in English. The worry, the tension, the panic, none of it appeared. It was as if my mind had been waiting for this moment to reveal what it had been building quietly in the background. That is the power of consistency. It doesn't show results every day, but it builds results every day. And when they finally appear, they feel like magic. The second sign of breakthrough happened while shadowing a podcast. In the early weeks, shadowing had been painful. I could barely keep up. My tongue felt slow. My pronunciation was shaky. I missed half the words. But now something was different. I matched the rhythm almost perfectly. My words followed effortlessly. My mouth didn't resist. I didn't feel like I was copying anymore. I felt like I was flowing. Shadowing wasn't just practice now. It had become a new voice inside me. The breakthrough didn't stop there. It followed me everywhere. One evening, I found myself watching a movie scene, and instead of reading the subtitles, my eyes drifted away. I didn't need them. The voices, the expressions, the sentences, they all made sense without effort. That had never happened before. English was no longer a language I was studying. It was a language I was living. And then the biggest breakthrough moment came in the most ordinary way possible. I received voice message from someone speaking English. Normally, this would have triggered panic. I would rehearse my response 10 times, delete recordings, worry about pronunciation. But this time, something inside me felt calm. I pressed play, listened, and without thinking, recorded a reply. One take, no fear, no hesitation, no overthinking. When I listened back to my own voice, I couldn't believe it was me. The tone was steady, the rhythm was natural, The words came easily. The confidence was real. That was the moment I realized something important. Fluency is not a skill. Fluency is a shift in identity, a shift in confidence, a shift in belief. People think breakthroughs are sudden events, but breakthroughs are slow explosions. They grow silently inside you until one day they finally reach the surface. That is what happened inside my mind. The daily habits, the repeated exposure, the courage to speak despite fear, all of it combined into one powerful change. But there was another side to this breakthrough, a psychological side. I began trusting myself. Before this journey, every mistake felt like failure, every pause felt like weakness, every misunderstanding felt like proof that I wasn't good enough. But after the breakthrough, mistakes didn't scare me. Pauses didn't bother me. Misunderstanding didn't break me. I understood something deeper. Fluency isn't about speaking perfectly, it's about speaking freely. Once you speak freely, fluency follows. Confidence grows faster than vocabulary. Courage grows faster than grammar. Identity grows faster than fear. This is why the breakthrough felt like freedom. Not because my English was perfect, but because my fear had finally lost control. Another surprising change happened during this phase. English became my emotional language. When something upset me, I found myself expressing the frustration in English. When something inspired me, English words appeared first. When I imagined my future, the thoughts came in English. It felt like my mind had unlocked a new doorway. That's when I understood something I had never realized before. Fluency doesn't happen when your English improves. Fluency happens when your relationship with English improves. The moment English becomes comfortable, familiar, connected to your daily emotions, that's the moment your fluency accelerates. It was during this period that people around me started noticing the change. A friend said, "Your pronunciation sounds different." Another said, "You're speaking fast now." Someone else said, "You sound confident." But the truth is, I wasn't speaking faster. I wasn't trying harder. I was simply speaking without fear. Fear slows your tongue. Fear tightens your throat. Fear interrupts your brain. Fear kills fluency. Remove fear, and the real voice appears. By the middle of month 2, I felt unstoppable, not because I had mastered the language, but because I had mastered myself. My brain had adapted, my habits were strong, my confidence was rising, my voice was expanding, and every day I felt one step closer to the person I always wanted to be. This was the turning point where I no longer asked, "Will I be fluent?" Now I asked, "How fluent can I become?" The difference between those two questions is the difference between doubt and destiny. And as I continued forward, something became clear. The last month of my journey wasn't about learning English anymore. It was about becoming a different version of myself, one who was capable, confident, expressive, and unafraid. The final phase of my journey wasn't about language, it was about identity. And that's what segment 6 will reveal. Segment 6. The last month, becoming the person who speaks English naturally. The final month of my 3 month journey was not what I expected. I thought it would be the hardest month. I thought it would require twice the effort, twice the discipline, twice the pressure. Instead, it became the month where everything finally made sense. It was the month where I stopped trying to learn English and started trying to become the person who speaks it. The last month was not about language, it was about identity. By this time, my habits were solid, my voice was stable, my fear had been pushed into the background. I had already crossed the biggest mountains of doubt, but this last month demanded something different from me, something deeper, something more personal. I had to let go of the old version of myself, the version that believed English was impossible, the version that felt small, the version that repeated old stories of failure. I had to step into a new self, a self that felt worthy of fluency. This shift began quietly, like most transformations do. One morning during my usual self-talk session, I stopped mid-sentence. Not because I forgot a word, not because I felt nervous, but because I realized how naturally the words were forming. The sentences were not perfect, but they were smooth. My mind wasn't translating, my tongue wasn't resisting, the flow wasn't breaking. It felt like I was hearing a new version of myself, one who sounded calm, confident, present. That moment stayed with me the entire month. It was the moment I understood that fluency is not something you finish. Fluency is something you become. The final month was filled with small surprises like this. Moments when I could express complicated thoughts. Moments when I could explain feelings without hesitation. Moments when I could speak faster than before. Moments when I could listen to English for long periods without feeling tired. Every day brought a new proof of growth, a new sign that my brain had accepted English as part of its identity. But the most powerful transformation happened internally. I stopped seeing English as a challenge. I stopped seeing it as a battle. I stopped seeing it as something outside of me. I began seeing it as a space inside me, something I could fill, shape, control. And once I felt that shift, everything changed. There is something important that people don't tell you about becoming fluent. A point comes when your brain stops resisting the language. In the beginning, every sentence feels like climbing uphill. Every word feels heavy. Every conversation feels exhausting. But after enough repetition, after enough exposure, after enough courage, the brain relaxes. It stops fighting. It stops overthinking. It stops demanding perfection. It adapts. The last month was the month of adaptation. My brain stopped treating English like a foreign system. It treated it like a second home. When I watched videos, I didn't need subtitles. When I listened to podcasts, I didn't translate. When I spoke, I didn't freeze. When I read, I didn't struggle. When I thought, I didn't switch back to my native language. But what surprised me the most was the emotional shift. I no longer felt that heavy feeling in my stomach when someone spoke English to me. I no longer felt pressure to speak perfectly. I no longer felt like I had to prove anything. I began seeing English as an opportunity, not an examination. This emotional transformation is what allows people to move from basic fluency to true confidence. When fear disappears, the real voice appears, and that real voice began showing up everywhere. It showed up when I went to the grocery store and spoke to a foreigner without hesitation. It showed up when a friend asked for help with an English assignment and I explained confidently. It showed up when I responded to English voice messages in one take instead of rehearsing 10 times. It showed up when I talked to myself and felt no resistance in forming complex thoughts. It showed up when opportunities that once scared me now felt exciting. But the biggest lesson of month 3 came from a simple truth I learned the hard way. Fluency requires forgiveness. I had to forgive myself for the years I wasted being afraid. I had to forgive myself for staying silent in conversations. I had to forgive myself for avoiding opportunities. I had to forgive myself for letting fear control me. I had to forgive myself for believing I wasn't capable. That forgiveness created space for a new version of myself to rise. And the final month was when this version finally arrived. I spoke more boldly, I practiced more freely, I explored more courageously, I experimented with new tones, new expressions, new ways of speaking. I let myself fail, I let myself succeed, I let myself grow without judgment. The last month also taught me something unexpected. You don't become fluent by studying everything. You become fluent by mastering what matters. It is not about learning 1,000 advanced words. It is about mastering the words you already know. It is not about memorizing grammar rules. It is about expressing yourself naturally. It is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about speaking through them. English stopped being a subject for me and became a lifestyle. I lived inside the language. I breathed inside the language. I experienced my days through English. And that immersion, self-created, self-maintained, gave me the final push I needed. Every day of that last month made me stronger. Every conversation sharpened my voice. Every podcast built my rhythm. Every shadowing session strengthened my fluency. Every voice recording shaped my confidence. Every self-talk session connected me deeper to the language. Every step I took made the next step easier. And near the end of the 3rd month, something happened that made everything worth it. I received a message from the same company that had once rejected me. This time they offered me another interview. But when I stepped into the interview room, I wasn't the same person they had rejected. I wasn't the silent version. I wasn't the nervous version. I wasn't the doubtful version. I spoke clearly. I expressed myself confidently. I answered without fear. I communicated like someone who trusted their own voice. For the first time in my life, I felt like English belonged to me. And when the interview ended, I walked out of that room knowing one thing with complete certainty. 3 months was enough to change the rest of my life. That is what the last month gave me. Not just fluency, but ownership. Not just improvement, but identity. Not just progress, but transformation. And when I realized this, I knew one truth deeply. Anyone can do what I did. Anyone can rise the way I rose. anyone can rebuild their voice in 3 months. It starts with one decision, one system, one commitment, and that brings us to the final chapter of this journey. Segment 7. The new you, rising into a future you never thought possible. There is a point in every journey when you look back and barely recognize the person you used to be. That moment arrived for me on the last day of my 3-month transformation. I stood in the same place where I had once felt defeated, helpless, embarrassed, and small. Except this time, I felt none of those things. I felt tall. I felt grounded. I felt ready. I felt like someone who had rebuilt his voice, his confidence, his identity, piece by piece, day after day. And the most powerful part was realizing that I had done it myself. This final segment is not just about fluency, it's about rebirth. It's about rediscovering the part of yourself that fear once tried to silence. It's about what happens after the transformation, when you begin using the new voice you fought so hard to build. On the last morning of my journey, I woke up early. The sun had barely risen and the room was quiet except for my breathing. I sat on the edge of my bed and asked myself the same question I had asked 3 months earlier. Who do I want to become? But this time the answer didn't come from doubt or desperation. It came from strength. I whispered to myself, I want to become the person who speaks without fear. And for the first time, I realized I already had. The next few days were filled with moments that confirmed how much I had changed. English started flowing out of me during conversations without hesitation. I could express deep thoughts without breaking the rhythm. I could explain ideas that once felt too complex. I felt comfortable in discussions. I felt present. I felt powerful. I no longer avoided opportunities. I stepped into them. One day I joined a group discussion with a mix of local speakers and foreigners. Months ago, I would have sat silently, pretending to listen, hoping no one would call on me. But this time I spoke freely, not perfectly, not flawlessly, but confidently. And when people nodded at my ideas, when they respected my opinions, when they didn't ask me to repeat myself, something inside me shifted permanently. I no longer felt like I was trying to be fluent. I felt fluent. Another moment arrived when I had to talk to a customer service agent in English. Usually this was the moment I feared most, but this time I spoke without a shaky voice. I explained my problem calmly. I understood everything the agent said. And when the call ended, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Not because the conversation went well, but because I handled it with the confidence of someone who trusted their ability. The final phase of my journey was filled with moments like these. Simple moments, everyday moments, moments that once terrified me but now felt normal. That's when I realized something powerful. True fluency is measured not in vocabulary or grammar, but in comfort. When English becomes comfortable, fluency becomes natural. When fear disappears, confidence takes over. When confidence grows, opportunities follow. But this segment, this final chapter, is not about celebrating my transformation. It's about preparing you for yours. Because what happened to me can happen to you. Your fear is not permanent. Your silence is not permanent. Your hesitation is not permanent. Your struggle is not permanent. They are temporary shadows waiting for a little light. And that light comes from daily practice, from small, consistent actions, from believing that you deserve a better voice. The truth is, you don't become fluent in 3 months by accident. You become fluent in 3 months by rebuilding yourself. You change how you think. You change how you speak. You change how you show up in front of the world. You change your habits until your habits change you. You build an identity where English fits naturally, not forcefully. And once that identity forms, something incredible happens. You stop fearing mistakes. You stop fearing conversations. You stop fearing judgment. You stop fearing opportunities. You stop fearing the sound of your own voice. You become someone who trusts their ability to grow. In the final week of my journey, I wrote something in my journal that I want to share with you now. It said, "Fluency is not the result of mastery. Fluency is the result of courage." I didn't understand how true that sentence was until I reached the end. I realized that fluency was never about knowing everything. It was about showing up every day, even on the days when fear tried to hold me still. And that brings us to the greatest lesson of all. Fluency does not end at 3 months. It begins there. The real journey starts now. You don't stop practicing. You don't stop improving. You don't stop expanding, because English is not something you finish learning. English is something you grow into. It becomes part of your life, your identity, your voice. By the end of the 3 months, I had become someone new. Not a perfect speaker, but a confident one. Not a flawless communicator, but a fearless one. Not someone who avoided English, but someone who embraced it. And that transformation gave me more than language. It gave me a new future. Somewhere inside you, the same transformation is waiting. You may not believe it yet, you may not feel ready yet, but readiness is not what changes lives. Action changes lives. Commitment changes lives. Courage changes lives. If you take one step every day, your English will improve. But more importantly, you will improve. And when that happens, everything else in your life begins to rise with you. So here is my final message to you. If you have struggled with English, don't give up. If you feel behind, don't quit. If you feel afraid, don't hide. If you feel stuck, don't stay silent. You have no idea how powerful you can become in 90 days. You have no idea how much your voice can grow. You have no idea how much your confidence can expand. You have no idea how many opportunities are waiting for you on the other side of fear. You are one decision away from a different life. You are one habit away from a different voice. You are one belief away from a different future. You are capable. You are strong. You are rising. And now, as we close this journey together, I want you to remember one last thing. You don't need permission to change your life. You only need the courage to begin. And if this story inspired you, if it touched you, if it gave you strength, Please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep growing together. Your new English voice starts now.